see here. I'm going to start doing something. Sorry, my nose is sucked up. Where I'm going to start doing something where I read stories and I'll do questions and stuff like that. So today I'm going to read a couple stories. In the first story, or the first two articles that we're going to be reading are very, very short. They're just 2 paragraphs over Apollo 11 and the first person to set their foot on the moon. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start reading that. I'll never forget the day that Apollo 11 landed on the moon. It was July 20th, 1969, and I had just turned 12. Although it took place on late Saturday night, our time, my parents let me stay up past my bedtime to join the millions of people watching Neil Armstrong take the first step on the moon's surface. I still recall how my imagination raced. Would I be able to live on the moon one day? At that moment, everything seemed possible. And now for the second one. At 10:56 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, on Sunday, July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first person to set foot on the surface of the moon. Astronaut Buzz Aldrin followed Armstrong onto the lunar surface about 20 minutes later. Oh my gosh, sorry. My nose keeps on itching. Historic events were broadcasted from the moon's surface and watched by perhaps the largest television audience ever, approximately 500 million people around the world. So those were the 2 things. And now the next 2 stories that we're going to be reading is about Amelia Earhart. So the first article is called Born to Fly. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. Amelia Earhart didn't always dream of becoming an aviator. While she's seen airplanes growing up, it wasn't until her early 20s that she realized she was born to fly. When Earhart was 20 years old, she and a friend attended a stunt flying contest. Their fun ended, however, when one of the planes came zooming towards them. In spite of danger, Earhart stood firm, displaying the same fearlessness that she would continue to show all of her life. This encounter proved to be a sign of things to come. Just a few years later, Earhart found herself flying inside an airplane. On December 28, 1920, pilot Frank Hanks changed Earhart's life by taking her on her first plane ride. It was then that she knew she was meant to be in the air. Earhart attended her first flying lesson just 5 days later, and by 1922, she was already setting records. She became the first woman to fly to an altitude of 14,000 feet. Over the next 15 years, Earhart would continue to make her mark on the world record time and time again, proving that flying was truly in her blood. Now I'm going to read the second paragraph over Earhart, and it's called Earhart on Equality. As a famous female aviator, Amelia Earhart did much to advance equality for women. In 1928, she became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic, and she spent the rest of her life fearlessly flying further and faster. Earhart was first to fly many long, dangerous routes, and she encouraged other women to fly. She championed women in the science as a guest professor at the Purdue University. She said, "Women must try to do things as men have tried. When we fail, their failure must be but a change to others." And I'm really sorry that I don't really read that good. My nose is like really stocked up. And I'm just having a really hard time reading because of my nose being stocked up. But yeah, we've only been doing this for 5 minutes and I've already read 4 stories. Now the next one is about Helen Keller. There's 2 articles about her also. And one of them is actually a story she wrote about her life. It's called The Story of My Life. And then the second one is called A Remarkable Life, which is somebody who wrote about her, but it wasn't her. So, the story of my life. My teacher had been with me several weeks before I understood that everything had a name. One day while I was playing with my new doll, Miss Sylvian put my big rag doll into my lap also, spelled D-O-L-L, and tried to make me understand that D-O-L-L applied to both. Earlier in the day, we had a tussle over the word mug. Miss Civilian had tried to impress it upon me that M-U-G is mug, and that W-A-T-E-R is water. But I persisted in confusion to the two. In despair, she had dropped the subject for the time, only to renew it at the first opportunity. I became impatient at her repeated attempts, and seizing the new doll, I dashed it upon the floor. I felt my teacher sweep the fragments to one side of the hearth, and I had a sense of satisfaction that the cause of my discomfort was removed. She brought me my hat, and I knew I was going out into the warm sunshine. We walked down the path to the well house. Someone was drawing water, and my teacher placed my hand under the spout. As the cool stream gushed over one hand, she spilled it into another and said, "Water." She spilled into the other the word water. She spelled into the other the word water. Sorry. First slowly, then rapidly. I stood still, my whole attention fixed upon the minors of her fingers. Suddenly, I felt a misty consequence, as of something forgotten, a thrill of returning thought, and somehow the mystery of language was revealed to me. I knew then that W-A-T-E-R meant the wonderful cool something that was flowing over my hand. That living word awakened my soul. Give it light, hope, joy. Set it free. So the next article over what's her face again? Helen Keller is over. It's called A Remarkable Life. A Remarkable Life. A Remarkable Life. So sorry. For a year and a half after Helen Keller's birth on June 27, 1880, she was a healthy, bright child. She started to talk at 6 months old and walked at 1. However, all of that changed in February 1882. She came down with a high fever. Although she was survived, her family soon discovered that the illness had left her blind and deaf. Young Helen found always to cope with her new situation, such as developing a limited system of signs with a playmate. By the time she was 7, though, she had also become wild and undisciplined. Despite her family finally contacted the Perks Institute for the Blind, which recommended a recent graduate, Anne Sylvian, to work with Helen. Of course, most of the people know the story about Civilian's helped Helen realize that W-A-T-E-R meant the liquid running over her hand. Helen learned 30 new words the first day and went on to quickly mastering finger signs, touch lip reading, and braille reading and typing. Determined to complete college, Helen Helen graduated with high honors from Radcliffe in 1904. She also wrote and published her autobiography, The Story of My Life, in 1903. She wrote 10 other books and many articles in her lifetime. Her greatest achievements, however, were her efforts to help others around the country and throughout the world. Many of her visits prompt the creation of new resources for blind and deaf-blind individuals. Because she could relate to people's difficulties, she worked with leaders to improve their situations. Everywhere